Hello and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Maya.
It is Maya, yes. We forgot to discuss this before, but it is indeed.
Maya has dealt with her own limiting beliefs alongside emotional abuse and a sense of losing her freedom. She is here today to talk about how she has healed from her past and is now helping others succeed. She is a business mindset coach that has been in practice since 2007. She has worked with hundreds of clients specializing in supercharging performance and confidence in personal, academic, and professional lives. She is an expert in the Sedona method and is here to talk about limiting beliefs and so much more. Welcome, lady. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And yeah, sorry about that. Usually I do go over that, but it's such an easy name that I didn't even think about it until right before
I know.
And then I'm like, Maya or Maya?
I know. Don't worry. It's happened to me before. Just after, 3 months of knowing someone. Actually, how do I pronounce your name?
Oh, that's good. That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out at the Her Version podcast. I so appreciate you taking the time. And I'm super excited to dive into all of your journey. It's definitely one to listen in on. Definitely want to listen in because I think so many women can somewhat relate to a lot of this, for sure. So what I would like to do is to kind of hand over the floor, let you talk about your childhood, your teenage years, and kind of how that led you into the Army and this obsession that you have with freedom.
Okay, sure. So first of all, I am half Israeli. So this will explain later on why I ended up in an army. I came from a pretty dysfunctional family, and it was a pretty traumatic upbringing. So there was emotional abuse, and there was also a lot of physical punishment as well. And I really grew up with a lot of anger, rage, really, a lot more than anger. And I just grew up hating myself, to put it in a nutshell. I was just filled with self-hate. I thought I was, a waste of space, and that I was just not deserving of anything, not worthy of being loved. And I had very, 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 very low self-esteem and confidence. And so when I reached the age of 18, just like every other 18-year-old in the country, unfortunately, I had to go to the Army. This is for 2 years for women. Men do 3 and women do 2. And I can tell you stories about that too, but it was basically, a really hard time because I was also still am, very kind of anti-authority. I had a difficulty taking, orders from other people, and especially when in that particular context, because I was also very just anti-army, basically anti-war, anti the situation. So that was a really difficult time for me. And on top of that, coming from the background that I had come from, it was really difficult for me to socialize in that situation, to connect with other people. And that's basically really what gets people through that, but I didn't even have that. So I was, it was really a nightmare, like having to wake up every morning and, do what I needed to do, and then come back home, because I was, serving on a base that was close to home. So at the time, you kind of had a choice between serving far away from home and close to home. And I think, in retrospect, I think I made the mistake of choosing close to home, because I thought, okay, well, this might be easier, because at least I get to come home every evening and I can see a friend or someone and, get to sleep in my bed. But actually, being far away from home, I realized later that they actually had far better conditions, and also it didn't help me in terms of the relationships that I was having with my parents at home.
Wow.
I didn't really go so much into it, but at home it really was an atmosphere of just constant fear. And I was very much closed up always in my room, and it was just it was always tense. It was always very, very unpleasant. So anyway, so after spending 2 years in the army and really having a very difficult time, the time has finally come for my release. And I thought, like, oh my God, and I'm finally going to be independent. I'm going to be this free adult, and I'm going to go out into the world and do what I want and be who I want and express who I want to be. And when the day arrived, and after that day arrived, I very quickly realized that the army wasn't what was standing in my way, and that I was the one in my way. So, sorry. And so I really began to recognize all the fears that I had in me, or the limiting beliefs that I had in me, or the rage that I had in me, and all this self-hate that were really keeping me, like a prisoner in my own little world. I was unable to communicate with people properly. I was unable to trust people. I generally, with the communication, it's really so far from where I am today. It's almost, it's mind blowing to me, really, because at the time I wasn't able to, barely, I was able to have deep, meaningful conversations with my friends, let alone with strangers. Never mind, small talk or anything like that. That was, I don't know what that is, impossible. But yeah, communication was a huge thing for me. And so when I came out of the army, I realized how bad things were. And I also realized that, first of all, that I wanted to be free. I wanted to, be this person who could easily just go out there and be who they wanted and express what they wanted. And this is when I started doing work on myself and started to be really interested in personal development stuff. And this is also when I came to realize something that was like a big, realization at the time, that really my parents were, sure, they were absolutely awful parents, but the responsibility for being the person I want to be is on me, and not on them. So it might not be my fault where I am, but it is definitely my responsibility.
Yeah.
So, and also another thing about parents is that I also realized that, many people in the world are going to be lousy parents, So, I mean, lots of people, they're not meant to be good parents. And they're not, I don't mean this in a judgmental way, people are flawed and we all have our issues, and many people who have issues end up having children, right? And so they pass on different issues to their children. So, but what's the alternative to that? I used to ask myself, I said, okay, so what would be the other option? Those people not having children, in that case, I wouldn't be here, right?
Yes. Good points.
Yeah, so this is kind of also what brought me to the acceptance of, okay,
Wow.
they're just flawed people. They're not perfect parents, and it's my expectation of them that was the problem. It wasn't them really. It was me expecting them to be good parents to me. That was causing me my suffering. And when I realized that, you know, it's okay, they're unable to give me what I need, and that's fine if I can take that responsibility and give myself what I need. And so
so when you were that young, you know, you kind of said that right around 18 when you left, or right around 18 is when you kind of started to realize this whole freedom thought process in your head. Can you like pinpoint? Go ahead. It was after.
I was just going to say 18 was when I joined the army. So I was getting obsessed with the idea of freedom because I wanted it. Okay. But when I was 20, when I was released, then I really started to really recognize and realize what freedom actually was, and that it wasn't the limitation of the army.
Yeah. So did you at that point connect? Like I know now, you know, but at that point, were you connecting your obsession with freedom with just the army, or were you actually connecting it and realizing that you were lacking freedom for your whole 20 years? Where were you at mentally?
So, yeah, I did absolutely make that connection because, like I said, again, I was very, I was just full of fear and rage. That's what I was made of at the time. Rage, fear, and self-hate. And I didn't want to be that, you know. I had this idea in my head of, you know, what I wanted to be like. And I don't know, I guess this kind of just general idea of freedom and like passion for life and all this kind of thing. I think I always had that. And it was just increasingly getting more and more and more frustrating to me, realizing how blocked I was from that and how far away from that I was, and how I was wasting my time. You know, this is a big thing. I was really spending a lot of time, finding myself spending a lot of time on regret, you know, and all the stuff that I'm not doing and all the stuff that I feel like I'm unable to do or unable to say to people or unable to connect with people, you know. And I was like, what the hell am I doing here? You know, what am I here for? And am I going to be living for the rest of my life like this? This is ridiculous. This is not why I'm here. You know, so yes, I absolutely made that connection. But I thought that what was stopping me was me still being at home, you know, still being a teenager. And then I was in the army, so that was in my way, you know. And so this is what I mean by only when I was released from the army and suddenly I could do whatever I wanted to. I could move out if I wanted to. I could do that if I wanted to. But then I realized that it's only, you know, my inner blocks, that those were my inner barriers that were stopping me, and not the situation.
Yeah, 100%.
So when I really started to realize that, and I started to work on myself and looking at just different people or resources or books and things like that. And one thing that I kind of started to do was to kind of force myself into being free, which meant, okay, I'm just going to say everything that I want to say, you know, everything that I really mean and everything that I feel and all this. And another, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this to you in our previous conversation, but this was another big thing for me, is that throughout all this period of the army and also my years in high school, I had a friend, a guy, and he was one of my best friends. And after some time, I realized that I had very strong feelings for him. He was more than a friend to me. And he was close to the degree that, and I was also close with his family, and his mom was absolutely lovely. And she would kind of like take me under her wing. And there was one time when I was kicked out of the house during the army. Mm-hmm. And she took me into her home, and I actually lived with them for 3 months until my dad invited me to come back. So yeah, we were very close, and I was in love with him, and I knew that there was no chance in the world we would ever be together. Mm-hmm. He was also at the time just exploring his sexuality, so it was just like completely not an option. But it wasn't the point. I had to tell him, just because you were friends for so long, and it was just kind of the unsaid thing.
Wow.
And I kind of assumed that probably he knew, but I just wanted to say it, and I just wanted to be free of it, and so after I was released and all these things were happening, I told him that I was in love with him. I wrote him this really long letter. It was just this crazy. It was more like a journal entry, a really long one. I don't know how many pages it was, but it was all about my reflection on myself and my freedom and this and that and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And in the end, coming to the conclusion of my feelings towards him. It's kind of funny.
Hopefully he made it to the end. Did he read it all the way till the end?
He did read it. However, unfortunately, and this is where another big lesson came for me, is that his reaction was to stop talking to me.
Really?
Completely. This was after years of being friends. Now, to this day, I don't know what exactly his reasons were. I can, assume, different things and speculate, but it was what it was. He stopped talking to me, and he completely cut off all contact, just like that.
Wow.
And so that was another big lesson for me in terms of, sure, in the beginning it felt catastrophic. Oh my God, I've just lost one of my only, closest friends. And, it felt like this huge loss. But then I realized that actually this is no loss. I had to do what I had to do, and I feel so free now. And beyond that also, I think it's so important to be able to not only express yourself, but also be able to love regardless of whether they love you back.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another big lesson for me. And I just kind of took that in, and I said, you know what? I'm just going on a mission on this life to just be, again, free and passionate about life and about people. And I don't care whether I get anything back. I get back, I don't get back. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be the winner anyway. If I'm just going around like this and feeling high like this, from just feeling this love and allowing it to come out. And so, so that was kind of one of the things that happened during that period. But it was basically a really funny period for me after the army, because I was just coming out with just stuff all of a sudden, like saying things, and, people were feeling kind of uncomfortable. I lost some friends along the way, and I had made some friends along the way. And it was just a very up and down, very emotional time for me. So that's kind of the background. And then I then discovered self-hypnosis, which I found an amazing tool for me. So we had this book lying around the house, which I don't know why, but it was this sort of popular book to have, like a coffee table book. Yeah. Many homes that I've been to have had this book for some reason. And it was The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by something Murphy, Dr. something Murphy, I don't remember. It's a very old book, really old. And it's very, very kind of simple exercises. And I thought, hey, I'm going to take this seriously. And also I was really interested already then. I mean, I was always interested in like the nature of the mind and like, the universe and all these, big questions. They would literally keep me up at night as a child, like, what does it mean, infinite? I don't understand.
Wow.
That kind of thing. So I really got into this book, and another thing also that might be worth mentioning is that throughout all my upbringing and all the challenge and all the suffering and all that, the one thing I think that I'm really grateful for having is I always kind of had this connection to like the bigger picture in a way. I always knew that whatever I'm going through is just a part of a story.
Really? You've always viewed it that way?
I always did. And I always kind of felt this sort of connection to like the universe and I knew that this whole human experience is it's just a story. It really is. This is why I resonated so much with the Sedona method, which we'll get to later. But I always did. It was always kind of like somewhere in me, I knew that there's something a lot bigger than this, and that I can look, at things in more perspective. And I think that's what got me through everything. even at a really young age. And I remember even like sitting, I really clearly remember these nights when I was kind of, I used to just go out my window and sit on the roof a lot at night because I was a real night owl. And this was also the time that I much preferred because nobody else in the house was, awake. So this was like quiet, like safe time. And I was just out on the roof with me in the sky. And, and I really clearly remember like times, just sitting there and just thinking about this exactly, and how it's okay. It's all just a chapter. And even if things, you read a story and it might not be a happy story, right? But it's still a story worth telling, and it's still a meaningful one, and it can still be a beautiful one, even if negative things happen in it.
Yeah.
So, I'm just reading a comment. My story is just beginning. Oh, that's beautiful. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So hypnosis. So I started doing these exercises, and I really found that gradually they started to make a really profound difference in how I was feeling, how I was thinking and behaving. And the funny thing was that after a year or 2 years, I don't remember exactly, a year and a half maybe, I don't know, I actually left Israel, which meant that I didn't even have to do the army, because in terms of, I could have gotten out of it at the time, because I never returned, and my whole fear around getting out of the army was around the implications that it would have later on in my life.
Wow.
If I were to continue living there. So it wasn't really intentional, me leaving for good. I just left to travel, but I never returned. That's just how it happened. And but I did really make it also a goal of mine. I didn't want to leave before I reached a state where I felt acceptance, towards everything that's happened, and where I was. And I really didn't want it to be an escape. So I did reach that point, and then I felt, okay, I'm ready to go now. I'm leaving because I feel that this is not my place, and I feel like there are other things calling me. It's not because I just want to get out of here.
Those who've suffered had a knowing when we were younger, long before we finally had an understanding. Old souls just know.
No, I absolutely, I agree. I think that, intuitively, but it's more than that. I think intuitively, a lot of us know a lot more than we think we know.
Yeah, definitely.